Welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It is 9 o'clock, which means it's time for another video. Now today, I'm going to be talking to you about what a magician can learn from studying professional wrestling. That's right, what a magician can learn from studying professional wrestling. Now this might be the first of a couple of different videos, just because there is so much that magicians can learn from wrestling. I have been a wrestling fan my entire life. I remember getting into it around about WrestleMania 2, it might have been WrestleMania 3, and I've been a huge fan my entire life. Always have been, always will be. I've gone through the highest of highs, I've gone through the lowest of lows, I've gone through my fandom in wrestling where I was abused for being a wrestling fan and everybody mocked me, and I've been there when everybody was wearing Stone Cold t-shirts and DX t-shirts and all points in between. Nothing will stop me from loving wrestling. I love everything. I love New Japan, I love WWE, I love WCW, ECW, the list goes on and on. AEW now, everything. And you know what? There's a lot that magicians can learn from studying professional wrestling. There really is a lot that magicians can learn from studying professional wrestling. And on this video, I'm going to talk about some of the things that you can learn from watching a professional wrestler or researching into professional wrestling. But I'm going to be maybe doing a couple of these because there's so many points, and I don't want this video to be two and a half hours long. So this might be the first of a two-part video. But let's get straight to it. Let's count down some of the reasons why magic and wrestling are so similar, and some of the things that we can learn from studying wrestling. Okay, so point number one. Point number one is kayfabe is a thing of the past, and magicians need to learn that. Now, this is kind of a weird one. If you're not into wrestling, you probably don't have a clue what I talked about. So let me elaborate. In wrestling, kayfabe is the concept of people feeling like wrestling is real, right? So back in the 80s, when Hulk Hogan was the man in WWF as it was then, everything was kayfabe. So in other words, wrestlers spent so much time and effort on trying to make people believe that wrestling was real and unscripted. The bad guys only ever traveled with bad guys. The good guys only ever traveled with good guys. You couldn't break character when you were in person. Everything was designed to be as real as possible, because the wrestling industry worried that if people realized that it was scripted and it was predetermined, nobody would watch. Now, if you fast forward to the modern era, which is where we are at the moment, and wrestling is very popular. You look at how popular you look at how popular AEW is. WWE is still, even though there's a vocal minority of people that moan about WWE, there's still a huge, massive fan base there. Wrestling's more popular than ever before, and now everybody knows, everybody knows that wrestling is predetermined, right? Everybody knows it's real. If you don't think it's real, ask wrestlers that get injured on a nightly basis. Ask wrestlers that have broken their legs and their bones and their spine whether wrestling's real or not. The bumps that they take and the bruises that they get are all real, but obviously everything is predetermined in terms of the outcome of the match. We know, producers will script the matches beforehand, and the results will be known before the match even takes place. That's kind of common knowledge now. Now, if you went back to the 1980s and you told Vince McMahon in the 1980s or Hulk Hogan in the 1980s that's how wrestling would be now, they probably wouldn't believe you, because they would probably think that wrestling would go completely out of business if people realized that it wasn't real, right? But not only has it not destroyed the industry, but it has actually taken it to an entirely new level. I think we need to learn about that as magicians as well. There are still magicians going out there making people believe that magic is real, or trying to make people believe that magic is real. In my opinion, anybody that's got half a brain in 2022 knows that when they see a magician, they haven't really got magic powers. In 2022, magicians know, or lay people know, that you can't really do magic. Because if you could really do magic, if you could really, really, really do magic, why are you having a card coming to the top of the deck? Why aren't you snapping your fingers and having £1 million appear in your hands? If you could really manifest things and you could really make things happen, you would be doing something far more interesting than a little ball vanishing and going into a spectator's hand. People are aware that it's sleight of hand, it's misdirection, it's subterfuge, and yet there is still a huge section of magicians that will go out there trying their hardest to make people feel that it's real. And not just mentalists, but magicians as well. And really, I just completely disagree with this. I was having a conversation with Laura London about this a little while ago, and she is of the same mindset as me, in that it's just ridiculous. People that go out there and try and pretend that this is real, it's like you're just making yourself look stupid, in my opinion. And that's obviously only my opinion, but that's just the way that it is. I think that in this modern day, if magicians just embrace the fact that laymen know that it's not real, I think we'd be in a much better place. I think that trying to convince people that it's real is just stupid. I've got a friend who is morbidly afraid of people thinking that what he's got isn't real. And I've talked about him on this channel before. He's like, he will refuse to, he's married, and he'll refuse to let his wife in on any of the tricks that he does. I remember when I put my thumb tip down on a table in his living room, he absolutely went ballistic because he didn't want his wife to see a thumb tip so that she knew how he vanished a silk handkerchief. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, right? It's ridiculous. If there's one thing that magicians can learn from wrestling, is that people knowing that magic's not real is not going to affect their enjoyment or destroy the magic industry. We're not going to have the Magic Circle headquarters blow up because people realise that it's sleight of hand and not real magical powers. And you weren't actually, hit on the head at birth from a little magician with a little magic wand. You haven't really got magic powers. You've just spent a lot of time learning how to do what it is that you're showing people. Point number 2, presentation is everything. You ask any wrestling fan what they enjoy the most. Now, some of them might say a super technical match. They'll talk about the Bret Harts and the Shawn Michaels of the world, or these days CM Punk or Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson, whoever he is these days. They'll talk about all of this, right? But realistically, the thing that most fans buy into when they watch wrestling are the promos. Most fans buy into the storytelling, right? The stories that are created between the wrestlers. Rather than having if you just had a match where wrestler A and wrestler B fight for absolutely no reason at all, there's no emotion attached to it. There's no interest attached to it because, it's just a good guy fighting a bad guy. But if there's a story behind it, and off the back of that story, somebody comes out and delivers a promo, which is in wrestling speak, where you stand in the ring and you deliver, a speech to the audience or to another wrestler. Those are the things that most wrestlers really buy into, right? I remember one of the most iconic moments in WWE history was CM Punk, who's now with AEW, came out and delivered a pipe bomb and delivered the promo that was heard around the world, right? It's that moment. Nobody was talking about the matches that he had at that point. He was talking about the promo, right? Presentation is everything. And it's the same with magic, right? The most important thing that you can learn as a magician is how to present your magic clearly, and how to present your magic in a fun, entertaining way. That's vitally important. If you are just a technician, if you are just somebody who has learned a whole bunch of moves, and you go up to somebody and you go, hey, you want to see a trick, and you do a whole bunch of moves, they might buy into it. You know, hey, David Blaine made a career doing that in the early days. Absolutely, they might buy into it. But they're more than likely to enjoy the performance if it's entertaining and engaging and something that they can buy into, whether that being funny or that being mystical or whatever it may be. Presentation is absolutely everything. And if you're the sort of magician that just learns move after move after move and spends no time thinking about scripting, that spends no time thinking about lines, spends no time thinking about the delivery or the entertainment value behind a trick, then you're probably doing yourself a disservice. The next point I've got is developing a character, right? Now, when you think about wrestling, you think about all of the greatest wrestlers of all time. They all had characters. Now, I'm not just talking about the over-the-top characters. Obviously, when I think about characters, you're going to think about somebody like The Undertaker, right? The Undertaker, who is one of the most iconic characters in wrestling of all time. But when you think about the normal people, they were characters as well. So Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, he had a character. He might have been a normal guy, but he had a character, and that character evolved and changed over the years. He was originally, you know, when he first came out, it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to go into the history of Shawn Michaels, but the point is every wrestler has a character. Even someone that comes across as relatively normal has a character. Bret Hart, for example, he had a John Cena is a perfect example of somebody from the modern era. John Cena had a character, right? He had a character of, well, originally he was a rapper, and then after being a rapper, he was this good guy that always tried to be on the side of good. But everybody's got a character in one way or another, and that's something that we should learn as magicians. We should all have a character. Now, I'm not suggesting that we all go out and try and think about what we can do to be the next Piff the Magic Dragon. I'm not suggesting that somebody goes out and goes and buys an otter suit and calls themselves Oscar the Otter or something like that. That's not what I'm talking about. But think about your character and think about how you perform and think about what your character would say, because that's going to help you with how to deliver your script. It's going to help you with the type of magic you would perform, the trick selection. It's going to help you with absolutely everything. If you understand your character and you understand how your character would perform, it's going to make you a better performer. So everybody has a character. Every wrestler has a character. Every magician has a character. It's about finding out what your character is. The next point that I want to make to you is you can get by on limited moves. You don't have to know every move under the sun. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful. So, you know, there's magicians that are, let's talk about wrestlers first of all. There's wrestlers that are successful that know hundreds of moves. I remember that one of the most popular wrestlers of all time, Chris Jericho, he had a gimmick many years ago where he knew 1,001 holds. You know, he knew so many wrestling moves, you know, that he knew more than anyone else. But then you look at somebody like John Cena, and John Cena was famous for having the 5 moves of doom. He only knew 5 moves. John Cena was one of the best wrestlers of all time. He had a very limited move set. In fact, some of the best wrestlers of all time had a very limited move set. You look at Stone Cold Steve Austin. Stone Cold Steve Austin is somebody who had a very limited move set. It became even more limited once he broke his neck, thanks to Owen Hart. You look at Hulk Hogan. He had a very limited move set. Heck, beyond a big boot and a leg drop and and a body slam, he didn't really have much else. All of these wrestlers had limited move sets, and yet they were the best of their generation, right? It's the same with magic. A lot of magicians that I speak to, they think that the way that they're going to get better is by learning more moves. The more moves I learn, the better the magician I will be. Because the more moves I learn, the more magic I can do. You know, I've met magicians that probably know 5 or 6 tricks, but they do those tricks so bloody well that they get booked again and again and again because they're so entertaining, they're so engaging. And you look at somebody like Stone Cold Steve Austin, who had a limited move set. He was incredible on the mic. He delivered promo after promo. He could literally have the audience on the edge of their seat. You look at Hulk Hogan, he was exactly the same. He carried the entire company on his back with his incredible promo style. You look at John Cena, he was exactly the same. Very limited moveset. He had an incredible promo. You look at the wrestlers that have done well, that have got more of a moveset, like the CM Punks, like the Bret Harts. They still have a good promo. They're still good at presenting to a crowd. Absolutely. So it's not like the move set. I don't think I've ever seen a wrestler get to an incredibly high level just by having the moves. Just by having the moves. I think the closest we got was somebody like Jeff Hardy years ago when he was a world champion. He didn't really have much of a promo style, but he had an incredible moveset, but he became champion for 0.3 seconds, right? The point I'm trying to make here is you don't have to focus on having move after move after move after move under your tool belt. There's other things that you can focus on. You can get by on a limited move set. Okay, the next point that I want to make is not really about wrestlers, but it's about the wrestling industry as a whole, which is something that magicians need to learn from, which is embracing modern marketing techniques. Wrestling and wrestling organizations have always been hyper aware of the importance of marketing in order to fill arenas, right? And looking at the WWE as an example, they're always looking for that next big thing. I remember when Periscope, does anyone remember Periscope? Was it Periscope? Which was Twitter's live streaming thing that came in before Facebook Live. I remember them embracing that. I remember them embracing Twitch, was it, or something? I don't know. They're always looking to try and jump onto every platform. When Twitter was the biggest thing in the world, they'd have constant updates of which hashtags they were using were trending, and now TikTok is a perfect example. Now they're really using TikTok as a platform, and they're constantly pushing stuff out on TikTok. They're constantly looking at the latest trends in marketing that they can use to develop an audience that's absolutely rabid for their product, right? And as magicians, we need to do the same thing. And I've talked about this on other videos before, but it's not good enough just sitting there waiting for the yellow pages to roll out again, because that ain't going to happen. You know, I know magicians that go, oh, I don't even want a website. I get no work from the website. Well, you know, you should be using a website because you can get a ton of work from it, right? You constantly have to be looking at the next best way to market yourself. You can't just rest on your laurels. There's always new marketing techniques coming out. If you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. And if there's one thing that we can learn from watching organizations like WWE, it's that we constantly have to be pushing ourselves to reach our fan base. And we have to be using every single method at our disposal. And we have to be constantly looking to see what new marketing techniques are coming out. Another thing that we can talk about is that this is very important, really. This is really important. I almost didn't talk about this, but it is really important. You don't need to go looking for the next best thing. What I mean by that is I see magicians constantly, and what they're doing is they go out there and they go, well, you know what? I'm looking for that trick. I'm looking for that trick that is going to make me famous. Once I've found that trick that's going to make me famous, I will be a superstar. What they don't seem to understand is there is no one single trick that's going to make them famous. There's not. There is not one single trick that is going to make them famous. Instead, what is going to make them famous is ultimately hard work and going out there and pushing themselves and making sure everyone sees them and communicating with their audience and so on and so forth. There's not one trick that will make them famous. And it's the same with wrestlers. You know, you'll see wrestlers, and you'll see some wrestlers, the mid-carders. And what I mean by mid-carders are the the wrestlers that are okay, they're kind of the middle of the road. They're not the worst. They're not jobbers. They're not people that are out there just getting their ass kicked every single week, but they're not the main eventers either. They're kind of middle of the road, right? They might, if they're lucky, get a tag team title run or maybe an Intercontinental Championship or something. Those mid-card wrestlers, one thing that I see constantly is they're constantly developing their moveset. And I've seen interviews with wrestlers that have been in the mid-card their entire life, and they give an interview that go, you know what, I'm looking for that move. I'm looking for that move that will make me famous, because everybody will see me do the move and they will tell everybody that this is the guy, right? And you see all of these flash-in-the-pan wrestlers that flip all over the place. And you know what? Most of the time, they get nowhere. They end up being a mid-card wrestler and eventually getting released. And the reason that happens is because that's what they're focusing on. Instead of focusing on developing a relationship with the fans, giving the fans a reason to care about them, giving the fans a reason to love them. And again, you got to go back to people like Stone Cold Steve Austin and John Cena. They've got a very limited move set. They don't go and put new moves in very, very often, if at all. But the audience absolutely loves them because they focus on getting that audience to love them, and they focus on building up their audience. And that's what we need to do as magicians. We need to focus on the important stuff, and learning a new trick is not important. Okay, this is definitely going to be a two-part video because this is already running too long. I'm going to do 2 more points, and then I'll do another follow-up to this at some point in the near future. The next point I've got here is reach for the brass ring, which kind of sounds like a weird thing, reach for the brass ring, but this is something that is talked about in wrestling an awful lot, especially in the WWE by Vince McMahon. If you don't know who Vince McMahon is, he's the owner of the WWE. He bought it from his dad many, many years ago. Doesn't really matter. The point is, he constantly tells new wrestlers, you got to reach for that brass ring. And what that means is, if you want to be successful in the WWE, you've got to do what other people aren't prepared to do. You've got to reach for that brass ring. You've got to put yourself above and beyond everyone else. Not everyone can be famous. A lot of people that come into wrestling, everybody wants to be the greatest wrestler of all time. Don't get me wrong. Anybody who comes into wrestling wants to be the greatest wrestler of all time. They've probably trained and worked really hard for years and years and years to be the greatest wrestler of all time, right? But not everybody's going to make it. Very few people are going to make it to that top spot, right? Even less people are going to make it to the top spot, but very few people are going to even make it to the main event level. And the reason is they're not prepared to do what it takes to become successful. You got to be prepared to do what it takes. Now, if you're happy just being a jobbing magician, and I'm going to refer to magicians now, if you're happy just being a jobbing magician, going out doing restaurant gigs or whatever it may be, that's absolutely fine. And, you know, I'm never going to be a TV magician. I'm never going to be a superstar. Hell, my son is more famous than I am. I'm good with that. But if you want to be the guy, you got to go out and do the stuff that people aren't prepared to do. Look at Dynamo, for example. Why did he become so big? He became so big because he was out there pushing himself, going out, going above and beyond, you know, like crashing parties, making sure that celebrities saw him, having his picture taken with celebrities, forcing the situation. And that's what you've got to do sometimes. You've got to put yourself out there. You've got to work hard and put yourself out. You've got to reach for that brass ring, because not everyone's going to be able to do it. Not everybody can be a Dynamo. Not everybody can be a Darren Brown. But if you want to be at that level, you've got to do what everyone else is not prepared to do. And you've got to basically really reach for that brass ring. And the final point that I've got to you is never give up on your dreams. You know, never give up on your dreams. Always, and that's something that we see from all wrestlers. The wrestlers that have been in the various different organizations for years, that have longevity, that are there year after year after year, and even though wrestlers are getting released from various different organizations and we never see them again, they're always there. The reason is they never give up. right? And you look at somebody like Drew McIntyre. Here's the perfect example. So who's Drew McIntyre? Well, he was the world champion a little while ago. He's still operating at main event level. This is somebody who came into the WWE, was kind of nicknamed the next best thing, very quickly became a jobber, and got released from his wrestling contract. Now, he could have very simply have said, well, you know what, I made it to WWE, I tried, I've been released, oh well, time to give up on my dreams. But he didn't. He worked his ass off, and he managed to make it back to the WWE, and very shortly after making it back to the WWE, he became world champion, right? He never gave up on his dreams, and it's the same with magic. You know, you want to be a magician, it's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. It's not easy. There are going to be times where you are wondering where your next gig's coming from. There's going to be times wondering where your next meal is coming from. You know, I've been so broke in this industry, I don't know what to do, but I was too dumb to quit. You know, and if you want to quit, that's absolutely fine. If you want to give up on your dreams, that's absolutely fine. But not everybody can be a professional magician. If it was easy, then everybody would be doing it. But not everybody's doing it because it's not easy. It's hard. And being self-employed, running your own business, being a professional magician requires effort and time and blood, sweat and tears, if I'm completely honest. But you want to be successful, never give up. Be like John Cena, never give up. So there you go, guys. That is part one of wrestling versus magic. What a magician can learn from professional wrestling. Do me a favor, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you want to see a part two? If you do, I've definitely got enough here to do a part two. If you want to see a part two, let me know in the comments down below. Also, do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Are you a wrestling fan? Are there points that you can think of? I would love to know what you think. Don't forget, you want to see more videos like this, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. I'm going to be back again tomorrow with a whole bunch more videos. So I will see you again very, very soon. Don't forget, if you want to join the NETRIX, please do so by going to www.thenetrix.com. You can join in the fun for, just try it out for a month and see what you think. I'm going to be back again soon. Thanks very much for watching. My name's Craig from Magic TV.